So, what's happening in Washington? He went past that really quickly, if you'll notice. So, but there are things that are happening in Washington. And on this presentation, I just want to tell you about some of the different areas. And I wanted to use as discussion points. We'll talk a little bit about COVID-19, about the economy, healthcare, the environment, social justice, veterans issues, consumer protection, the future of work, and then constituent services. Next slide. So, first of all, I was glad that Bob did talk about COVID-19, and ultimately, we need to all make sure that everyone is staying safe, both our physical health, as well as our mental health, as well as our economic health. And so part of what I'd like to share with you is just a little bit about that. And of course, I would be remiss if I did not give the commercial about making sure we're wearing our masks and social distancing and doing all the things that we need to do to stay safe. I think right now people are having a little bit of fatigue, including Zoom fatigue, and almost wanting to just kind of get out and act as if we're not still in a pandemic. But we are still in a pandemic, and I hope that you are taking care of yourselves and your families and your employees and your community, because we do have to protect our health. And that is the way that we will be able to confidently and effectively open up everything. Our schools, our businesses, and then there are those workers who have never stopped working, and we want to acknowledge all of them, because they're allowing us to be able to still have a strong economy in spite of this situation. So we'll talk about staying safe and a little bit about COVID-19 in terms of the numbers and economic recovery. Really discussing that road to the economic recovery, and then just a little bit about what we're doing in Washington as well. Next slide. I always try to start my morning by acknowledging the numbers that you see on this screen, the human impact, just like Joe did with 9/11. We can't forget that this pandemic is about our fellow citizens. And some of you may have had family members, or you yourselves, who may have even contracted COVID-19. But the numbers, 6,362,324, the deaths, over 188,513. And then here in Delaware, some of our family, friends, and neighbors have also perished. And so we start off by saying our heart goes out to them and their families. And it reminds us to, again, be ever vigilant during this pandemic. Next slide. So, in addition to our physical health, we also are looking at the economic health that this pandemic it has presented unprecedented challenges to our economy. Joe worked with me when I was Secretary of Labor here in Delaware. And, we never saw numbers like this in terms of the unemployment rate. It is a stark reminder to us that, again, it's not just our physical health, but it's our economic health. And so we have to pay attention to that. Next slide. Here are some of the things that Congress did. And I'm going to say this on a bipartisan level, overwhelmingly bipartisan level. And I always say that because I want people to I am a pragmatic optimist. I want you to know that we came together, just like on 9/11, and made sure that there were direct economic payments to folks in our country, enhanced unemployment insurance. And those benefits, we also had to think a little bit more broadly about the fact that, as I'm going to talk about the future of work, we now have a gig economy. And people aren't working in traditional jobs all the time. And so even that, being flexible and saying, let's take a look at that. We also, I mentioned before, businesses, as you know, are the backbone of our economy, and particularly small businesses. So the PPP program And the EIDL loans to small businesses were a focus of our bipartisan work in this area. We also did other things that were flexible in thinking about how we provide benefits as well as our healthcare. So issues like telehealth were another area where we were more flexible together. What I've been fighting for is expanded testing and looking at innovative ways to do testing so that we can be effective and efficient, so that there, number one, is enough testing so that people can feel confident that when they go into a workplace or a school that people are safe, but also creative ways to make sure that they are, that the testing is rapid and that it is therefore effective. I also was able to advocate for legislation that is included in the bigger package to provide no-cost treatment. In the previous packages, we wanted to make sure that testing was available to everyone. But if you get tested and you find out you have it, but you can't afford the treatment, then why even get tested? And so one of the bills that I was able to advocate for and that was put into the larger package was no cost treatment. The other area that I've been really focused on and fighting for is making sure that, number one, we continue to have the PPP program and the EIDL loans, but also that we make sure that they're targeted to the businesses that really need them, not ones that don't. And so that's another part of our role in the congressional office, is also to be a focus on accountability and to make sure that the dollars are going to the right places and make sure that there's flexibility. We had to change this program in midstream just to make sure that it was expanded long enough for small businesses and that it gave some flexibility. Next slide. So what is currently happening? Many of you, I'm sure, are following the news, and you know that the House of Representatives as well as the White House are currently negotiating on a new potential package. And at the same time, the Senate, under the leadership of Mitch McConnell, has unveiled recently their new, and I didn't call it this, they call it this, a skinny package. I'm not going to make any other, I won't say it's emaciated, I won't, okay, maybe I just did, but it's called a skinny package. That's what is being proposed by the Senate right now. Next slide. And I just wanted you to see how the skinny package stacks up against the HEROES package, which we passed over 100 days ago. And I will tell you the reason why we passed it and why it was so comprehensive is because we know that the stakes are that high and the nature of this pandemic is that broad and impactful and deep. And so we wanted to really address those issues. And so you can see in terms of unemployment benefits, what the skinny package plan proposes and what the HEROES Act had in it and has in it, which passed the House. The state and local relief, that is one of the areas that is primary. We hear it from governors, mayors, county executives. We hear from businesses that we need to make sure that state and local government has the resources that they need. That's our firefighters, first responders, teachers, you know, just the services that we need to make sure that we can operate, particularly in a pandemic. Unfortunately, the skinny package doesn't have funding in it for state and local relief. What we proposed actually would bring $3 billion to Delaware. One of the other big areas with that is that we've heard from the governor and others is that they also need flexibility and that they need to be able to spend that money out farther because the pandemic is stretching further along than we thought it would. And then the other piece is that, one of the other pieces is that there's no money for a stimulus check. There are other areas as well that we tried to focus on in the HEROES Act, like our hospitality industry or our hospitals. Those are also not in the skinny plan. Next slide. Before I want to finish up on that, because I'm going to preempt a question. The question you may have is, well, what is going to happen between these two? We on the House side have expressed an interest in negotiating and taking our package in terms of, we put up a $3 trillion package. We have expressed interest in shaving off some of the money from that package. But at the same time, we still have to make sure that we have money for state and local governments. We still need to make sure that our postal service and our election systems have the support that they need because of the result of a pandemic. And so we're continuing to work specifically with the White House, and we are hopeful. We are very hopeful that we will see a package. We are back in session. I just had a committee hearing yesterday in my Committee of Energy and Commerce, and we will be back voting in the next week for the next 2 weeks. So like I said, I'm a pragmatic optimist. The numbers that we're seeing are going to require us to make sure that we get something passed for the American people. So stay tuned, stay connected to our office, but I wanted you to at least have a little bit of a sense of why it is important that we come together. And I think it's also not unusual. In the previous 3 packages, the Families First Coronavirus Act and the CARES Act, we started out with a plan on one side, and then we come together. And that's how we do the negotiation. So that part's not unusual. What is unusual to me is like no relief for state and local government. I'm not quite sure what the thinking is on that, but next slide. But I will go on to what is hopeful for me. And that is an area that I've been working on since coming to Congress, which is really looking at the future of work and working across party lines to make sure that all Americans are prepared for the next evolution of our economic future. And I will say this to you, when I initially started having conversations about the future of work, it was because I thought it was going to be automation, machine learning, artificial intelligence that were going to push the future of work. But actually, it has been this pandemic that has pushed us to do things that we've talked about for decades. We have talked about distance learning for decades. We have talked about telework and people having policies and maybe a percentage of their employees doing it. We have talked also about telehealth and have now seen an explosion in telehealth, which has required us on the federal level to be more flexible about even how we reimburse. But it also means that we need infrastructure. And we need to really invest in infrastructure. Next slide. On the future of work. We're going to show you a little tiny.
1/3 of jobs that will exist in 10 years haven't even been invented yet. The future of work depends on us working together now.
Really isn't about disruption or innovation. It's both. Innovation is happening. Jobs are changing.
We can capitalize on this new challenge and use American ingenuity to our advantage.
This is not something to be afraid of. We just need to be prepared. We need to lean in. We need to be ready for the changes that are happening. Jobs are changing, and we need to change with them.
That was actually the voice of Brian Stile, who is the congressman from Wisconsin, my Republican co-chair. We started a Future of Work caucus. I led this earlier this year, and it is bipartisan. And when we had our kickoff, we had representation from education, from mayors, from you name it, companies, unions. And basically we had a kickoff that was standing room only. You couldn't even fit people in the room because there was that much interest and that much connectivity and understanding that the future of work is happening to us now. And so what we've been doing is focusing also on what skills do people need as we have exited, and as we're going through this pandemic, what is changing about how we work and what we do. And even this afternoon, I will be filming a session on the future of work to really try to focus on what skills are needed, what trends have we seen as a result of this, and how do we prepare as Americans, as business people, as policymakers, and individuals. That ties into healthcare for me, because not only have we had the technological changes, but also we have to look at the social contract that we as a country have had for over 100 years. You know, it's not the same as the old days where people go and work at one job for 30 years, they retire, they get the gold watch, and it doesn't work that way anymore. It just doesn't. And so one of the things that we're looking at is healthcare. One of the major issues that I've heard in our state and from many of you is that the cost of healthcare has an impact on your bottom line. And if people can't access healthcare, they don't have it. If they can't afford it, they don't have it. So some of the areas that we focused on is lowering prescription drug prices and also stabilizing the ACA. Because while it was not a perfect bill, it put us so much further ahead in terms of dealing with pre-existing conditions, allowing young people to stay on their parents' plan. There are a lot of things that are positive. We don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater, but we do want to make sure that we're making the changes that we need to lower costs. And so here are just a couple of examples of bills that we have been taking the lead on. One is the strengthening healthcare and lowering prescription drug prices. And as I mentioned, that would like stabilize the marketplace and ensure that healthcare costs come down, and that passed in the House. And that was a bill that has our name on it. HR 3, the Elijah Cummings Lower Drug Costs Now. This one was an important bill, and it is still in major discussions, because what we were finding is that in America, we were paying 2, 3, on some drugs, 60 times more than other countries, which doesn't make sense. And so part of this bill was to really talk about the fact that we should be able to negotiate those prices as a country, basically. And so that bill also passed the House and is waiting in the Senate. And then a last bill that I would just share, again, that's a bipartisan bill, is the Caring for the Social Determinants of Health. And this is really an effort to reduce our healthcare costs with strategies that are all connected to our healthcare. So if an individual lives in a neighborhood where it's a food desert, then that means they're going to eat unhealthy food, their healthcare costs are going to go up. If it's an area where they don't have access to housing, again, that has an impact on healthcare costs. And so with this bill, my Republican colleague and I are trying to encourage healthcare providers to be able to use current strategies like the CHIP program and the affordable and Medicaid to be able to fund non-traditional things that deal with the social determinants of health. Next slide. On the environment, this was another big issue for us here in Delaware. As we know, we have beach communities, we have low-lying communities that flood. We are impacted by extreme weather. I mean, I don't know about you, but my power has gone out like 16 times this year, and that was like last week. I mean, it's incredible with these storms and with the extreme weather experiences that we're having. It affects all of us. It affects your businesses, it affects our communities. And so with the environment, I worked really hard to get on energy and commerce, to get on 4 of the 6 subcommittees. And one of the subcommittees I'm on, in addition to the health subcommittee, I'm on the environment and climate change subcommittee. And we're looking at ways to create an energy efficient future. And again, next slide, I'll just go to a couple of examples for you. A couple of examples of priorities that we're fighting for Delaware is one, the ALERT Act, which would hold polluters accountable and give Delawareans knowledge that they need. So for example, if there is a toxic emission, that community, that fence line community should be notified of that. They should have information about what's the plan of action to deal with it. That's one of our bills that I sponsored. Another is the Safe Drinking Water Assistance Act, ensuring that we monitor the contaminants to protect Delaware families from unsafe drinking water, which also passed the House. And we also have a bipartisan bill, the Safe Drinking Water Act as well. And that to me is important, that we see this is not a partisan issue, that people should have clean water or air to breathe. Investing in State Energy Act. And this one would give grants and funds to states to be able to weatherize low-income households and improve energy efficiency. And that also passed the House. Those are just some of the examples of the things that we're working on as it pertains to the environment and energy. And I feel there's a true connection between our health, our environment, jobs. They're all connected. They're all connected. And the issue that Bob brought up earlier, social justice and dealing with issues of just our institutions and our structures, that for many years we have talked about issues of equity and diversity, but what this pandemic has shown is that we knew there were health disparities before. COVID-19 has highlighted that. We knew that there were disparities, even in policing. This moment has highlighted that and shined a light on it. And I think the thing that has given me maybe some of the most hope in this year is to see people coming together and saying, we want to address this, whether it is a business person who is saying, you know what, we're looking internally, we're holding a mirror to ourselves, to individuals that are saying, what can I do? How can I step up? To me, it's not about what we say, it's about what we see as the end result and what the outcomes are. And that's how we'll know we made a difference. Not just by the signs that we hold up, but that the signs that we see and the evidence that we see from our work. In the House, I have been working on legislation, first to reform our criminal justice system. And secondly, focused on this is giving nonviolent offenders a clean slate. I have a bill that is actually called Clean Slate. And it's the second one on our bullets here. It is a bipartisan bill where we've been able to bring Freedom Works and the Koch brothers that are like way to this side, and the Center for American Progress, which is way to this side, together to work on a bill that basically says, if you served your time for a nonviolent, low-level offense on a federal level, your record should be sealed so that you can actually get a job or get a home or get a college education. Because what we know is that 9 out of 10 businesses do background checks. And many of the businesses have said to me, we need people. But that stops us and blocks us from hiring people that maybe made a mistake that they paid the price for. This bill is supported by both because for different reasons. I call it my strange bedfellows bill. For some people, they care about the social justice aspect of it and the fact that we have a mass incarceration problem. For other people, they're saying, wait a minute, if we were able to return these citizens to the community and to the economic viability of our country, it would be an $87 billion infusion into our economy. Others say they like the fact that we have an automatic sealing provision in it. That cuts out administrative and court time. So for whatever reason you like this bill, I don't care. I like the fact that we all like it. And we're trying to come together on something, clean slate. And I'm even on text threads right now with Freedom Works and the Center for American Progress, the three of us all working together, along with my Republican colleague, Mr. Rushenthaler from the state of Pennsylvania, where they implemented that. And we're working on implementing it here in Delaware as well, under Senator Darius Brown. The other act above is the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which many of you may have been following. I will tell you, in addition to this pandemic, I think George Floyd's murder that many of us witnessed on television was a I don't even have words. I don't really have words to put around it with the exception of saying, I think it opened some people's eyes to things that they maybe didn't know existed, and has pushed and propelled us to take action. I wanted to give you just a quick update that while we passed the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act in the House and Representative Tim Scott passed a version in the Senate, the difference was ours focused on you shall and his focused on you may. The two groups are working together still. It's not in the news, you don't hear all about it, but there is a bipartisan, bicameral working group that are still working on policing. I here in Delaware have been working with our communities. I've been talking to the police chiefs. I've met with the unions, the police unions. I've met with community activists as well as community organizers. And one of the things that I heard throughout the state was that on both sides, again, trying to find common ground, was that both groups were interested in the issue of body-worn cameras. And what I've learned is that we were able to get an assessment of how many departments here, of the 48, how many have body-worn cameras. We were able to interview the chiefs. How many of you wish you had body-worn cameras? What is the thing that's stopping us? Money. That has been the big stopper. And so the city of Wilmington now has a federal grant in, which we are, fingers crossed, looks very successful. There are other, every single chief that we talk to that on our team, and that includes the Criminal Justice Council. We now have an interagency group that our office convened that is working to help Delaware be the first state to have every law enforcement officer have an opportunity to wear a body-worn camera. Police want it because it is an accountability thing and it helps them, and communities want it because it's an accountability thing. It's common ground. And so those are just some of the examples of things that we're doing in our role in the congressional office, helping to try to identify funds, dealing with the policies, and also bringing stakeholders together. And the last one I'll just mention at the bottom because it's important is the Equality Act that will prevent discrimination on the basis of sex, sexual orientation, and gender identity. That's a bill that also passed in the House, and we're hoping to see some action in the Senate. Next. Veterans who have served our country. I'm going to skip to the next page because it actually goes into some specifics. We heard from Delaware veterans. We've been holding different roundtables. And so some of the things that you see here, some of the examples of bills that we're working on and action that we're taking are from Delawareans that are going to affect the rest of the country. So for example, we heard that there were folks that are having problems during COVID-19 with the cost sharing burden for their prescriptions, for their medicine. And so that's one of the areas that we focused on, help our heroes access Medicine Act of 2020. Another was, we were hearing that the House and the Senate and the President, everybody worked to pass this bill to expand the opportunities for veterans to get services outside of the VA. But the thing is, many of these providers don't understand the culture and the experience of veterans. And so now we've been able to find a Republican co-sponsor for the VA Clinical Team Culture Act of 2020, which improves the access to mental health treatment and to providers for our veterans. That came from a Delaware roundtable. And then the other one from a constituent who didn't like me at all and told our staff he didn't like me. But one of the things that he did share with us was that as a disabled veteran, he was having difficulty because the Department of Defense will allow our disabled veterans to be able to travel, space available on flights, but they couldn't bring a spouse or a caretaker. And his point was, if I can't go by myself. We put that forward, and it became a part of the National Defense Authorization Act, in addition to, oh, I see, got some veterans on the phone, in addition to the Department of Defense actually saying, you know what, this is a good idea, regardless of whether the bill passes or not. to allow for space available flights. So that was something from Delaware that will affect veterans across the country. Next slide. Consumer protection. This is another one of the committees that I'm on, and we'll just go to the next slide just to let you know that we're doing everything from, you know, dressers that tip over on children to some of the bills that I've worked on, like the Stop Senior Scams Act, which has just now been broadened, and all of the scam and fraud bills have been placed under our bill. But ours was really to look at the fact that many people are being scammed through COVID-19. Many of our seniors are, you know, being taken advantage of. And so this bill basically creates an interagency committee with the FTC to say, let's help financial services organizations, as well as those who communicate out with our seniors to make, and retailers know how to better safeguard for our seniors. I also did a letter to Facebook, if you could go back. I also did a letter to the leadership of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, basically calling on them to be responsible for the spread of misinformation and to improve their hiring and their civil rights and the work that they do. I'm not going to say our letter was the sole thing that has gotten some of the movement, but I feel like we played a part in that, and that we're shining a light as well, because these social media platforms are really important to making sure that people are safe, protected, and that their vote is protected. And then lastly, I mentioned the FASTER Act. And now, constituent services. Next slide. This is just, again, a sampling, and the numbers have probably changed. We've served many constituents, and we also have worked in partnership with the rest of our delegation to bring dollars to Delaware. That is our goal, to make sure that Delaware gets what we need and what we deserve. Next slide. And we've done congressional conversations, mobile office hours, and had to be flexible and creative just like everybody else, and doing Zooms and everything else to get the word out. Next slide. And here is our contact information, just so you know how to reach us. Pretty much everybody in Delaware has my cell phone number, so you can just ask somebody if you don't have that too. But I want to thank you so much for allowing me to represent you, to share, and to continue to work. I will let you know I am as fired up as day one when you met me doing all of this work and running, and even more motivated by these times. And I thank you for what you do for Delaware, and I thank you for allowing me to serve you, as that was kind of the slogan from my first job at McDonald's. How may I help you? Thank you.
Congresswoman, thank you so much. This is typically where we hear the applause of the audience, and unfortunately, in this we can all wave, and unfortunately, we don't get to hear that. Before we may have just a few questions, and I'll turn over to Jamie to kind of moderate that. Wanted to thank you for participating today. And one of the things that I always appreciate about you is that in every presentation that you've ever made that I've heard, you've always talked about how do we find common ground? How do we bring people together to try to solve issues? So we don't always have to all agree on everything. And somehow in this country, we've gotten to the point where if everyone has to have 100% of everything. And there are ways that people can work together. There are ways that we can find common ground, and ways that we can move the ball down the field. And again, that's just one of the things that I appreciate about you, and that you're open to that dialogue and to working with people across the aisle, finding areas of common ground and trying to get things done. So thank you very much for that. And with that, I think people may have some questions that Jamie has. Jamie?
That presentation was quite thorough, and no one has submitted a question yet. I mean, I guess that means that you covered everything that you could possibly cover, since no one has shared anything. If you do have a question, please use the chat to get it in. I know we only have the Congresswoman for just a few more minutes.
And like I said, we We hope that you consider us to be accessible to you. I see some really good friends, Frank Vavala and Don, and I'm like, I don't want to start calling out names because I'll get in trouble. But Kia, look, I'm like seeing people on here. Jan, look, okay, I won't do another one except Jason, Mayoshi. Okay, I want to just say thank you for having me every time that you do. And like I said at the beginning, I love this chamber. I love the work that you do. I love who you are. And ultimately, everything for me, somebody just asked a question about the VP selection process. Ooh, that's a whole nother call. That's another hat. So call me later. But I really am proud to represent us, especially at this time. And I'm so thankful for the work that you do. And I want you to all just stay safe and stay well. Make sure you are taking care of your physical and mental health, especially right now. It's so important. It's vital. And it's one of the biggest messages I tell everybody. You got to put the oxygen mask on yourself before you can put it on anybody else, like Oprah says. So please make sure you take care of yourself and reach out to us if there's anything you need or just questions that you have. Courtney or the whole team, we're all here for you. And we thank you. And like I always say, it's all about love. It's all about love. Love each other, love yourself, love the planet. And if you believe in God, love God. Thank you.
I also just wanted to say, Don Mel from JP Morgan Chase did submit a comment. He just wanted to compliment your staff and mention Second Chance.
Thank you, Don. Thank you so much. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, actually, you're as good or great as your staff, and you're a great representative because you have a great staff. Hope I'm not embarrassing you, Courtney. And I just wanted to mention something about Second Chance because we at JP Morgan have been very involved in that at the federal level and at the state level on direction of our CEO, Jamie Dimon. And I will say this, Bob was the first person that we came to in Delaware when we wanted to work on this initiative and get the buy-in from the business community when we were working with Darius on his legislation that got postponed because of all the COVID things. But I just wanted to tell you that the county chamber and Bob in particular has taken a leading role on this, and it is much appreciated.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that, Don. Thank you. We're in it together.
And it's always great to get a shout out from you. Always.
Thanks, Don. Thank you all. Thank you, Jamie, for organizing, and again, to my team, thanks, Don, for shouting them out. I miss seeing all of you in person, and I'm looking forward to that day again when we can be together and exhale, sing, maybe dance. I don't know. I just want to see you guys, but for now, we're going to do this and we're going to make it through. We always have, we always will. Sticks in a bundle are unbreakable. Take care, guys. Stick together.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you again, Congresswoman. And stay tuned because we have a lot more of these scheduled between now and the end of the year with more of our senior elected officials. So, and we are still conducting a really, really robust series of virtual programming. So make sure you check out our calendar. All the things that we used to do in person, we're now doing virtually, and we found new and innovative ways to do it. So please tune in and join us. So everyone have a great day. And stay safe, and thank you.
Bye, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, Lisa. Bye.